has just started speaking at the NATO summit. Let's go straight to it.
I told him every time you hit, we hit. And of course, they're dirty players, so they go after everyone, probably including me. I've been number one on their list for years. And they're a bunch of scum, you want to know the truth. They're scum. And so we don't like them. I don't like them. And they're evil people, and it's the denuclearization of Iran. And we're going to denuke it. We're not going to let them because they're crazy, and they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they go around killing people. They've killed thousands and thousands of our soldiers. They've killed hundreds of thousands of innocent people. They had the roadside bomb, Soleimani. I took care of him, first term. And that was a big thing, because I think it probably would be a lot stronger had he been around, because he was a bad guy, but he was an evil genius, but a bad guy. And he was the father of the roadside bomb. The roadside bomb is a bomb that goes on when you're driving your little vehicle around, and it goes on and you have no legs, no arms, and no face. And they've killed thousands and thousands of people. Even the SS Cole was theirs, if you remember that disaster. So I don't like them at all. And frankly, I think we waste a lot of time with them. I think we should just do our business. Can you imagine? They start shooting bombs, actually missiles at ships yesterday. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, a couple of others. And I don't think they know what the hell they're doing, but they're bad people, very bad people. I think they're incompetent, by the way, because if they were competent, they would have made a deal a long time ago, like, how about 47 years ago? So they've been in trouble for 47 years, and we took out their first set of leaders, we took out their second set of leaders. They want to take out the U.S. leader, me. I'm on every list. I saw things this morning. I'm on every single one of their lists. And so far, I guess I've been a little bit lucky, but that maybe doesn't last very long, because that's the way it goes. But we have great people. But these are evil, sick people, and we have to rid their cancer. Their cancer. And you know what you do? You got to cut out cancer early. And that's the way I feel. And I want to thank Mark. He's been a great Secretary General of NATO. I'm not happy with NATO because of what they did with Greenland. And I'm not happy with NATO because of the fact that they didn't want to help us with the #1 state sponsor of terror. That's Iran. They were unwilling to help us. Now, in all fairness, I didn't speak to Mark about it. I think if I did, it might have been different. But we didn't need help. But I was really testing. I wanted to see whether or not they'd be there. And the answer is they were. I spoke to Germany. I spoke to France. Spoke to UK. Spoke to Italy. I didn't speak to Spain. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore, by the way. I'd like you to cut it off. Spain is a terrible partner in NATO. They don't participate. They don't pay. I don't want anything to do with Spain. Cut off all trade with Spain, please, including visits. Okay, we don't want anything to do. Watch them come running back. Oh, they'll come running back. They treat this man terribly, and this man's a good man too, great man. They're lucky they have him. But Spain doesn't agree to anything, and you shouldn't carry him. I mean, you sort of automatically carry because you're protecting an area, so they're there. So they probably figured they have to protect us, right? But we don't have to, and we don't have to trade with them. I don't want to do any more trade with them. All right?
Yes, sir.
Take it immediately. Don't even talk to them. They're hopeless. Bad people, because you know, they have everybody else going and paying and working. In particular, Spain. There are a couple of others, but in particular, Spain. They're open about it. They're hostile about it. And let's see how hostile they remain when they call up and they, please, please, we want to trade with you, sir. We want to trade with you, sir. They make so much money with us, and we're going to see that they make a lot less. I want no business with them. So, other than that, we're having the big meeting in a little while, and I'm going to relate my problems. Greenland is a big problem for us, and the other big problem is the fact that when we wanted them, we didn't want them badly, but we did say, if you want to join us, and they all said no. But when they could have, they weren't there for us, and we've been there for them. We spent over $1 trillion over the last short period, $1 trillion, in order to protect these countries from Russia. and has nothing to do with us. We have an ocean, but it's been a long-term thing, and they haven't treated us right. And Mark understands that. He understands that. And we're going to work something out, I think, one way or the other. But we've been treated unfairly. We pay disproportionately. We had a time when we were paying 100%. We were paying 100% of NATO, and yet a lot of the countries weren't paying anything. But there was calls made a few weeks ago. I spoke with the UK, and the Prime Minister said, well, we don't want to help you now, but we'll help you when the war's over. I said, that's not good. And likewise, I spoke to Germany. They didn't want to help. Spoke to France. They didn't want to help. Nobody wanted to help. Some of the very small countries wanted to help because they're the most vulnerable. I mean, that's the only reason they wanted to help. So I appreciate you being here. We're going to be going back together, many of us together. And again, I want to say, despite the fact that I'm very upset with NATO, that we pay far, far too much, billions and billions of dollars too much, because it's unfair, because we're protecting them. So we protect them, but they're not there for us. Think of it. Doesn't work. But I want to say this is a great leader. They're lucky they have him. It's their biggest asset. You want to know the truth? So, Mark, would you say a few words?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Mr. President. Dear Donald, let me start with Iran. We discussed it last night at the Presidential Palace. I think what you did, degrading the nuclear capability, crucial for Israel, the region, for Europe, degrading the ballistic missile capability of Iran, crucial for Israel, for the region, for you, for the whole world. And then trying to bring this to a peaceful end. They attacking ships yesterday. I think what you did last night was absolutely necessary. It was a very strong response. And I'm with you on this. It's really important. When it comes to NATO, what you have achieved, and this is a huge win, and I just want to say this again, the last 2 years, Canada and European NATO nations spending $215 billion more in 2024 and 2025 and 2026 compared to 2024. This is staggering, 258 billion. In the meantime, almost 200,000 jobs in the US being supported by all the investments by countries in the United States in the defense industrial base, buying from the defense industrial base from the US companies. So here you see there is you have been able to really get them to step up, to do this. And when it comes to Iran, I know you are disappointed. We discussed it a couple of weeks ago. I would say these are isolated cases. 5,000 planes taking off from European airports in support of Epic Fury. It was Europe as one big platform of power projection for the United States, helping with Epic Fury, including countries you mentioned, Germany from day one, France, and many others. We discussed the Bucharest airport, which was closed for a couple of days for commercial traffic because you needed it for Epic Fury, and they were totally
United
fine.
Kingdom wouldn't let us use the island for 2 weeks, so we had to fly back.
No, so I'm saying you're right. There are isolated
and
cases.
Italy was very bad, having to do with their bases, as you know, and a couple of others. So
But still, generally, 5,000 is huge. And you mentioned Spain. Even you got Spain to pay 2%.
Mark Rutte and Donald Trump there at the NATO summit. Donald Trump at the start there essentially threatening an escalation against Iran. Very critical, you heard there as well, of NATO saying no one wanted to help, particularly Spain. Well, Matthew Mary-Carrachet from our International Affairs Desk is still with me. I mean, where does what Donald Trump just said there then leave peace negotiations?
I mean, everything is completely up in the air. Like just this morning, Iranian Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Khalibaf, said that the era of bullying is over, indicating that Iran is done with Trump's bellicose language. And then for Trump to respond with such an angry remarks towards Iran indicates that this peace deal could go anywhere. Everything from the peace deal that was signed just 3 weeks ago, the memorandum of understanding, is basically disintegrated. The U.S. had agreed to let Iran export oil freely. That was just tossed out this evening. And also Iran has saying that Israel's constant attacks on Lebanon and the country strikes in Lebanon and the developments in the Strait of Hormuz that I was talking about earlier, the widening of the southern route and the demining, these are all tossing out the agreement. And this is really complicated for Trump because Trump has been just as NATO, saying that he is a peacemaker. He's saying that the war in Ukraine is about to end because he's talking to Russia and Ukraine. But then when you look at Iran, he has said dozens and dozens of times that the war in Iran is almost over, that Iran is desperate for a deal. And Iran is consistently showing that it will not be portrayed as desperate. And so if Trump continues in this manner, it could be foreseeable that this war could continue for a long time.
Well, let's bring in as well our correspondent who's joining us now from Brussels, Dave Keating. Dave, very delicate this for European members. Donald Trump already snapping at their heels as the summit got underway, and you heard him there in that press conference snapping even harder, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say this is not the NATO summit that European leaders wanted. They were hoping that they were going to be getting a calm Trump coming to Ankara. That is what we're told. That White House officials were briefing, that he was going to come in more conciliatory. Well, that's out the window now, as we just saw in that press conference, and also in his remarks yesterday. Already, immediately upon arriving at the NATO summit, Trump started reigniting his threats to Greenland, saying that Greenland should not be part of Denmark, it should be part of the United States, again criticizing allies for not joining his war on Iran. And of course, the flare-up overnight in that war is terrible news for the European leaders there at NATO, because it makes this subject, which clearly makes President Trump very angry, reignited. So we just heard in that press conference, he went through a litany of the countries he was complaining about. It was very interesting to me. He did not mention a single European leader by name. He kept referring to their countries, even when he was criticizing Spain very intensely. Not one mention of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, just kept referring to talking to France, talking to Spain. Interesting why he would have made that choice. But this is obviously going to be an awkward meeting. It's going to be very short, less than 3 hours. Just like last year's summit, they're trying to keep the time short to reduce the potential for any flare-ups, any outbursts from Donald Trump. But what we're now going to be watching for is that press conference at the end of the day from President Trump to see if he reignites these attacks on the European allies within NATO.
Dave, European nations, I mean, they have been scrambling, haven't they, to allocate more funding for defence. A load of new deals have been announced. Will it be enough, though?
Yeah, the European countries were really hoping that these announcements of $54 billion of new defense investments at this summit were going to placate President Trump. He hasn't even mentioned that increase of spending. It clearly hasn't registered with him, which has provoked a lot of frustration on the part of European diplomats there in Ankara who have been telling media, look, we did everything the U.S. asked. The issue is, of course, they're increasing spending immensely. They've agreed to this 5% of GDP target, 3.5% military, and the rest in adjacent spending at last year's NATO summit. But the issue is, of course, that they're making all this additional spending, but they're not actually changing the command and control structure. So if Europe was attacked, they are still reliant on the United States. No matter how much they spend, no matter how much American military equipment they buy, they're still reliant on a NATO command and control structure that relies on the United States. And that's what's not changing. So, we keep seeing at these NATO summits that the European countries are very keen to talk about how much additional spending they're making, trying to placate Trump. It doesn't seem to be registering with him. He's unilaterally focused on Europe, not
Dave, we're going to
interrupt
interrupt you because we're going to go back to hear more from Donald Trump. Apologies, we're going to interrupt to hear more from Donald Trump.
Rational, good people. Most of them. I don't like a couple of them, to be honest with you. But there are a couple I don't like much. But I like Erdogan. I'll tell you, I like President Erdogan. He rolled out the red carpet. He's terrific. He could have gone into the war. A lot of people saying, like with Bibi, I like Bibi. I think Bibi was a terrific wartime prime minister. But Bibi said rough things yesterday about Turkey and Erdogan. And I said, I spoke to him. I said, he could have gone into the war because he doesn't like Israel much. And he doesn't like Bibi much. And he didn't go because of me. And this is a military power. Millions of soldiers. Turkey is very strong. They have a lot of our best equipment. They're trying to get the F-35s. But he didn't go in. He would go in. If it weren't for me, he would have gone in. And he would have been on the other side. Even though I don't think he likes the other side either, because he happens to be very sane and they happen to be very crazy. But so I think, you know, they treated us right. I think China treated us right. I was with President Xi, and I said, I hope you're not going to go into the war, because we don't want that. You know, he gets 50% of his oil from the Strait of Hormuz, and he gets more than 50%. And he never went into the war. He didn't supply him equipment, you know. He was great. I'm a big fan of President Xi. A lot of people say, oh, why? You know, I watched a couple of people critical of the fact that TikTok is so bad, it's so dangerous, it's so horrible, they're spreading all these rumors. And the numbers came out yesterday. You know who's number one on TikTok? I am. I'm number one on TikTok. And all I talk about is how bad communism is, right? They say, oh, it's terrible, they're spreading, but I'm number one. And I listen to Gordon Chang. I like Gordon Chang, but he's always like negative. Oh, China's so terrible, they're so terrible. And TikTok is so terrible. But I'm number one on TikTok. I have like 4 billion views or something like that. So I don't know. People have to get their priorities straight. We have had a really good day. We're going to have another good half a day, and then I'll see you later. We'll talk to you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Later.
Thank you, press. Thanks, guys.
I also will do a press.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
It will be more
Thank
important.
you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Please head out this way.
Hey guys, out the
Thank
door.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Dave, we were talking just before about European nations and how they might respond to this. I mean, the main headline, I suppose, coming out from Donald Trump there was about the Iran ceasefire being over. No mention that we heard, anyway, of Ukraine.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it looks like it's going to be all day of this. I think it's pretty clear. This is a NATO summit off the rails. This is going to be a rocky ride this afternoon. It's true. He has not mentioned Ukraine. There will be a meeting with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky today. Of course, there's going to be renewed concerns about a flare-up between President Trump and President Zelensky, like we saw in the Oval Office last year. The one mention he made of Ukraine yesterday when he came in was saying that what happens in Ukraine is of no concern to the United States, doesn't impact the United States. That's obviously going to be very discouraging for the European allies who are still desperate for the U.S. not to completely pull support for Ukraine. The U.S. has pulled most of its support for Ukraine. Almost all of the financial support for Ukraine is now coming from the European members of NATO and the European Union, but there is still critical intelligence sharing that the U.S. is giving to Ukraine that the Europeans are still worried that President Trump is going to pull. So that meeting with President Zelensky is another potential flashpoint. Of course, then there's also the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who he has had this flare-up with over the past weeks. He was asked about her yesterday when he came in. He didn't really take the bait. He kind of seemed to want to de-escalate in his conflict with her. So we'll see. I mean, there's all kinds of potential flare-ups that can happen this afternoon between Trump and various European leaders. So we'll see where the day goes. And then, of course, you have the unfolding developments in Iran unfolding throughout the day, hanging over the entire summit.
Dave, thanks very much. Dave Keating joining us live there from Brussels with his analysis of that summit as it has got underway in Ankara for us.